So, can you please describe a teacher and a tutor?
Well, I think the teacher is the first. I see it as the first person to be giving trying to teach the students what it is the teachers want them to learn, and the tutor is following up this by consolidating, by helping the students with their homework, and if the students don't understand a point, then the tutor elaborates and then explicitly teaches them the point.
Have you ever had tutoring yourself?
Yes, when I was a student in secondary school for maths was not my strong subject, so I had a tutor for a time, particularly before the exams, to consolidate the mathematical equations I did not understand.
So it was one-on-one?
Yeah, one-on-one, and it was very effective.
So you liked it?
Yep, I liked it because I had a very concrete problem I did not understand. I could ask them, and then they could take their time to explain the problem or the equation one-to-one and do some consolidation exercises with that problem. It was successful.
So did you ask for tutoring yourself, or your parents decided?
No, I asked my parents, could I get a tutor? And also my parents weren't strong at maths, so they couldn't help me too much with it.
Okay. So have you ever been a tutor?
Yes, I've done extra tuition for students for English and covered particularly material that they were learning in the textbook, and the parents wanted them to be able to actually use the language, the target language. So I would work doing communication-based activities based on what they were doing in their textbook.
What was the style of tutoring? Was it one-on-one or small group or something?
Yes, it was a one-on-one tutoring mainly for that.
How would you describe a tutoring centre in a school?
Well, I would hope the tutoring centre has much smaller groups they're working with. So in a school you're working with, say, 25 students or more. So it's very difficult to get to extend the higher levels and get to the bottom level. The middle ground is okay, and so I would hope the tutors can, maybe with the lower level learners, are explaining more so they can understand what's been taught in school, and extending the higher levels by putting them into small groups, ability groups.
How about the teaching curriculum?
The teaching curriculum, again, I would imagine the tutoring centre is following what the teaching curriculum is of the school. So if the school's, whatever they're teaching, I would imagine the tutors are then following that so they can help the students firstly complete all their homework and prepare for the exams using the material that the students have been taught in school.
So how about the teaching materials?
Did I just answer that?
So they use the ones at school?
I would have thought they use the material that the students have been learning in school, and then they'd consolidate it by making sure the students are understanding that.
How about the characteristics?
The characteristics of the
Tutoring in school.
Tutoring
centers in school.
In school. Well, I think mainly size-wise, because schools are really, the size of the class is quite different, I would imagine, in a tutoring centre than in a schoolroom, in a classroom, I mean. And so that would be a major characteristic. And also the material being used in a school probably broader, and then the tutorial centre would be focusing on maybe where the problems are in understanding, so maybe a smaller curriculum area.
What do you think are the differences of the identities of a teacher and a tutor?
I think a teacher's identity is quite broad, whereas a tutor is maybe more fine-tuning on one particular point, whereas the teacher's thinking of the wider curriculum area, say of English, making sure all the needs of listening, reading, writing, speaking are met, whereas the tutorial centre, I would imagine, is focusing on if the student hasn't understood some of those areas, they will then focus in on them. And maybe extending, maybe because it's a smaller group, they can focus more on the speaking activities, whereas in a classroom it's quite hard to have a lot of opportunities to speak, just purely because of the size of the classroom, size of the students, how many students there are.
How about apart from the exams, grades, those things, what else do you think are the differences between them?
Yeah, the whole person development. See, I'm not convinced that the tutorial skills, because I'm not a firm believer in. I understand that it's very important to have the exams and assessments, but because I come from quite a different methodology base of teaching, I'm not convinced that the tutorial centres are the most effective way to go about making sure the students understand what's been taught in school. In an ideal world, I would have less assessment, less exam-based, and there wouldn't be the need for tutorial centres, but I come from a background of not going to a tutorial centre and having a very successful schooling. So it's quite hard for me to think that they contribute to the whole person development an awful lot, because in an ideal world, I think it would be great if we didn't need tutorial centres, and the child would have a much better development of a whole person development if they could explore play, friendships, learning through inquiry based when they go home and follow their interests, rather than a tutor explaining homework to them. So yeah, I don't see them as a hugely positive thing, but I understand why they have to exist in a very exam based, very assessment driven curriculum.
So you think it exists because of the curriculum?
Yeah, I do. I think if there wasn't such an assessment exam-based curriculum, I think you'd find the parents wouldn't get so stressed that their child has to go to a tutorial centre to help them make sure they get the homework. There'd be a little more room for the child to progress at their own speed.
What do you think will be the future trend of tutoring in Hong Kong?
Yeah, I think while it is in the system, we have multiple assessments, multiple exams throughout the year, I think the tutorial skills will thrive. But education changes, methodology changes. It's a difficult question, because I think in Hong Kong you've got a very unique situation where children, we hope, are coming out multilingual. At the best, they're biliterate. Of course, optimistically, we hope they're going to be biliterate and multilingual, but I think for the students that fall between the cracks, that are unable to keep up, maybe are not particularly good at the written form, sometimes the exam-based, the assessments, they can just get lower and lower, and then their self-esteem suffers, and then they fall through the cracks of not becoming fully successful individuals later, because they've been led to believe that they can't do well because they've only been assessed on the academic performance, whereas there's multiple successes of intelligence aside from just academically. So that would be my concern.
So was there less tutoring before when you first started teaching? And how will you compare the two situations? Which one do you prefer, or which one do you support more?
I think, I've just been teaching in Hong Kong for 9 years, 9th year, so I haven't seen not that I'm aware of, I wouldn't know, but I'm not aware there's less tutoring than 9 years ago, because at my old school, previous school, there appeared to be a lot of tutoring as well happening. But I couldn't give an informed, beyond that, I wouldn't be able to give an informed opinion, really. Yeah.
Okay, so there are different styles of teaching: one-on-one, small groups, small class, lecture class, and videotapes. Can you compare the efficiency of these several styles?
Yeah, I think they've all got a different place in the education of But when we're talking child, obviously lectures wouldn't be applicable. Larger class, of course, smaller class teacher ratio is preferable to larger class. So, but a child, we hope within a regular class, small class size, the teacher should be able to extend the higher levels and the lower levels, give enough support. But as we know, the reality is can't always happen, and it is a real challenge for the teacher. So in these circumstances, the smaller groups with a tutor, if it really is helping a child understand and getting them to grasp the concept, it's what we'd like to happen. And as the teacher of, say, a class of 25, she can't work one-on-one with the students. She just doesn't have the time. So in that case, an individual tutor could be really effective. I think it hinges on the quality of the tutors as well, and rather than just rote learning, completing the homework, which is great for handing in the next day, but if the tutor is really concerned with the student really understanding the concepts, then that's fantastic. Yeah, that can be supportive to the teacher.
Can you also talk about one-on-one and videotape?
Yeah, one-on-one, definitely, like I experienced when I was a high school student. One-on-one can be really effective because the teacher can focus in on what's needed to be understood and can think about ways that we can enable the student to understand the concept. Video, I think, could be effective, but probably primary school, it's quite challenging because I think primary school students need quite a lot of guidance to keep them on task and also understanding, checking that for their understanding. But if by video do you mean like one-on-one student-teacher through a computer screen, is it?
No, it's videotaped in advance.
Oh, so the material's videotaped in advance. Oh, okay. So no, not suitable for primary, because I think we need to check if they're understanding what we're teaching. But at secondary level, if it's focused subject and you've got a motivated student, I think it could be effective, but nothing beats having a teacher checking for understanding and making sure you are understanding what you're intending them to learn.
So which one do you think is the most effective, small class or small group or one-on-one?
Small group or one-on-one? Well, I think depending on what you're teaching, because for English, say communicative English, a small group is highly effective because you can do peer work, group discussions, whereas one-on-one, to maintain that pace can be quite hard and quite challenging for the teacher because they only get that one-to-one sentence backwards and forwards between, whereas sometimes a game or something can be really motivating for a student. So I think for those two different methodologies of teacher, depending on which circumstance, it does change. But one-on-one could be fantastic for explaining, say, a grammar point and checking for understanding and getting them to state back to you what it is that you are intending them to learn.
Okay, in terms of the efficiency of tutoring in general, all the styles in general, out of 100 marks, how many marks will you give the efficiency of tutoring?
Oh, that's a difficult question actually, because I think it really depends on the tutor. It's so individualistic. You'd have to know quite clearly the tutor, see the material they're teaching, how they deliver it, the methodology they use, and how they engage the students. So I think there's so many different tutorial centres, tutors, that I couldn't give a number.
So what do you think is the qualities of a good tutor?
I think a good tutor, like a good teacher, would be really fully understanding all the pedagogy of teaching, understanding how to use, and also methodology of teaching. So they've got a very grounded sense of how students learn in a subject area, and are able to tailor how they deliver it depending on the individual student. So quite a lot of, really, to be a really successful teacher, like a tutor as well as a successful teacher, there's an awful lot of sort of background knowledge that they bring to the job. So I'm sure there's highly successful tutors, and I'm sure there's ones that are not as effective.
So you have a son, right? Does he go to tutoring?
No, he doesn't. No, he just does. But he does have my husband who helps him, like, with his homework, and is constantly, of course, it's one-to-one, checking understanding and making it quite fun and active learning. So it's not passive learning. He's not just sitting doing rote. He's actually using, because my husband's a teacher too, and of course is grounded in all the pedagogy and methodology of teaching. So it probably is like having a very good tutor, one-on-one.
How old is him?
He's 9 years old.
Okay, what subjects do your husband teach?
Well, it's all subjects, because they do maths. It's maths, Cantonese, Mandarin. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.